right, we got another episode of IBC Guys. Welcome back. I'm Dave. This is Mike. We got a fun one today. We're going to kind of start working through maybe some misconceptions in IBC. So it's been a lot of fun to get feedback on the podcast. We get a lot of questions. So we're going to focus on one specific question today. But before we jump in, Mike Stevens, how are you doing today? I'm going to start with that. I'm not going to put you on the spot with anything, but how
I'm
are you
doing
doing?
good. I'm doing good.
So
I'm
I was
doing
talking
well.
to him
How are
about
you?
what we were going to share. My family is in the throes of spring sports right now. So my daughter does dance. So there's a dance competition, a practice, or something going on. My wife's, she doesn't like the connotation of a dance mom, but I like to tease her because she doesn't like it. She's a dance mom, doing hair and costumes. And so she has a lot of fun with that. And then my middle boy, we are doing golf lessons with dad all spring. So I grew up playing golf, played golf through high school, and played for my university team. So I've been on the course enough time to be able to coach him. So it's been some very fun time for dad to get him out there, uh, kind of show him what I know, and just spend quality time with my boy. So we're doing that with my middle child. And then my youngest, I think he loves baseball because of Mr. Mike. I don't know if I've told this story. It comes to my mind. So Mike gave my youngest a baseball helmet. And for the first week, this kid wore the baseball helmet anywhere he went. We have pictures of him in Target picking out ice cream with the baseball helmet on his head. So he
That's
eats,
awesome.
sleeps, and drinks baseball. And we're starting that up. So he's playing coach pitch. He's a little guy. He's in first grade, but doing a great job. We're working on throwing those frozen ropes from third base to first. But he's enjoying baseball. So that's what we're up to right now in the Parm household. Um, but jumping in, IBC, I got to go through all the podcast stuff. I feel like I say that every time. I think I do because it's not my favorite, Mike. We don't do this to get the podcast stuff up out there, but it's something we have to do. So we do. We exist for that reason. Is getting the information out. We want people to know IBC, what it's about, how to use it so they can make a decision for themselves. And quite often we are told, I know Mike's told it, I'm told it consistently. I feel like I understand it, it's just not for me. And that makes us just as happy as if you get a policy because you have the information to the best of our ability to communicate to you and you've made your choice. We just want to make sure the information is out there for everybody. The second reason we do this is we want to give tangible examples. So we want to bring real life things that happen, how to run IBC through them, how IBC is utilized. So it's not just this pie in the sky ideology. You can actually apply it to what you're doing. But third, to do those things, we want to get this information out as much as we can. So if you would share, like, subscribe. I think we're on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. So those are the places you can find us. Our social media stuff's in the show notes if you want to click on that. But get in contact with us. Our phone number is 507-205-2284. My email is Dave at familybankingsolutions.com and Mike's is Mike at familybankingsolutions.com. All right, podcast stuff out of the way. So, misconceptions in IBC. So, you've been doing this a lot longer because you're like 10,000 years old, Mike. But I've been doing this long. I've been doing this long enough where I'm starting to get the same. I'm seeing a pattern in questions, and there are misconceptions that either I'm not doing a good job enough job explaining it, which may be the crux of it, or it's unique enough that the same mentality that most people have been taught finds itself coming up in the questioning. So I think that's one of the misconceptions or the misconception we're going to talk about today is that kind of prior understanding creeps in and rightfully so and understandably so, but creeps into the IBC mentality. So we kind of want to talk about that today. So just to introduce it, Mike, the question, and that's the title of the podcast that I put on here, is do I really have to pay myself back? It's kind of the thinking. So I'm going to let you take it from there. If you would shape the context of that question, and then we'll talk through it and maybe people's misunderstanding and what IBC really entails.
Yeah. So I like to use the auto example, truck example, car example, whatever. I'm a truck guy, so I always say truck, but car, automobile, what have you. Everyone has a vehicle that, I mean, everyone that I know has a vehicle. I mean, if you're 16 or 96. I do know a guy that's 96, actually 98, that's still driving. But I mean, everyone has a vehicle, so it applies to everyone. And so I would say 95 plus percent of the people in the United States that have a vehicle purchase that vehicle using someone else's money, Ford credit, financial institution, credit, whatever, and they're paying interest on that.
Yep.
Or there's a small percentage that save up money and then pay cash. And we've kind of talked about, the advantages and disadvantages of different ways to purchase a vehicle. I think everyone would agree that the idea of just going to a bank and getting a loan for a vehicle is going to cost more than just buying the vehicle, using your money. So for example, if it's a $50,000 truck and you pay cash for the truck, it costs you $50,000. If you go to the bank and they charge you, let's just say 4%, it changes every day. So people say, well, I got a better rate, a worse rate. Just using 4% and 60 months, you amortize that out, it's going to be $55,000 too. So let's just say it's, instead of $50,000, that truck's going to cost you $55,000. It's going to cost you more using someone else's money. So when we sit down with someone and we talk about the IBC method and kind of foregoing the immediate gratification of getting that truck right away, you have to save up the money so you can use your money instead of someone else's money. Then that creates the question of, okay, I'm going to put it inside an IBC policy, and then I'm going to take that money out. Why do I have to put the money back in? I've saved up the cash. I saved up 50 grand to go buy a truck, but now you're telling me I have to put it back in my policy. So that's the objection or a question that's very common. So here's kind of my response to that. I ask people, okay, you buy groceries every month, regardless of what that is. I got college boys, so I mean my grocery bill is crazy expensive. But let's just say your grocery bill is, just say pick a number, $500 a month. I don't know, that's probably low, but
yeah, ours
say
is
$500 a month. If you save up $500 a month and put it in your checkbook and go buy groceries, I've never had anyone say to me, wait, do I have to put $500 back in next month? I saved it up and bought those groceries. You're telling me I got to put $500 back in my account. Yeah, if you're going to eat next month and then you go buy groceries the next month, you got to do it again. Every single month, you have to put that money back in your account. It's a cash flow system. The same thing with, let's say, everyone I know has a cell phone. Most everyone. I actually know one person that does not have a cell phone. But whether it's a cell phone bill or whatever your expenses are, people understand the concept of, okay, I put it in my checkbook. I'm not borrowing that money. I put it in my checkbook. I have the cash. I've kind of saved it up basically from my income. And I go out and I spend that money knowing that I'm going to have to put it back in my cash flow system, i.e. your checking account, and do it all again. Okay, so that's kind of a monthly expense. Well, let's take it a step further. Let's say annual expenses, like let's say homeowners insurance. If you own a home, pretty much everyone has homeowners insurance. Let's say that's a $5,000 bill. Okay, you save up money in your checkbook, and every year you write a $5,000 check for insurance on your home. Well, geez, do I have to pay that again next year? Yeah, it's an annual bill. So you have to put that $5,000 back in your checking account because next year you got to write that check again. Same thing with property taxes. You pay property taxes every single year. Yeah. Okay. Well, so that's on an annual basis. It's a cash flow system. You write the check, you save it up over the next 12 months, and you write that check again for your property taxes. Everyone seems to understand that. It seems once we get beyond a year, people's mind goes into crazy town. Okay, so let's go back to the truck, a $50,000 truck. I save up 10 grand a year, and after 5 years, I've saved up $50,000. It's in my IBC policy. I write that check for $50,000. Wait, now you're telling me I got to put $10,000 a year back in my policy over the next 5 years to save up another 50 grand. Well, in 5 years, are you going to need another vehicle, or are you going to stop driving? The trucks don't last forever. I mean, the thing's going to break down, and eventually you're going to need to trade it in and get a newer vehicle, right? And again, 5 years, I know people that get a new vehicle every year. I know people that, driving for 10, 15 years, whatever. I'm just saying on average, that's probably a pretty good number, that every 5 years people are buying a new vehicle. So yes, if you've already established in your mind that I don't want to finance it, it's better if I save up the money and use my money versus the bank's money, and I'm saving that money up, albeit inside of the IBC policy. When I write that check for $5,000, you want to put that money back in because it's a cash flow system. You're going to have to do it again in another 5 years. It's not next month. People understand that with groceries. It's not do it again next year. People understand that with property taxes and homeowners insurance, the annual bills. But yet, if it's 60 months, 5 years down the road, people are like, wait a minute, why? I have to put that back in my checkbook? I have to put that back in my account? I have to put that back in my cash flow system? Why? I saved up the money. I should never have to pay it back. Well, what are you going to do 5 years from now when your truck breaks down and it's got 150,000 miles on it and you need a truck? You're going to go to the bank, or you either have that money saved up. So that's one of the big objections or questions that we get a lot, that people don't seem to understand, that if I save up that money to buy a vehicle, why should I have to pay myself back? Well, it just makes sense. You don't have to pay yourself back, but if you don't, when you need another vehicle, and you will need another vehicle, I don't know anyone that has a vehicle and drives it from 16 to 96. I mean, vehicles don't last 80 years, okay? So you're going to need more than one vehicle in your life. And if you've already established the fact, convinced yourself that I need to save up the money and use my capital versus going to the bank, then you should understand that you're going to need to run that through a cash flow system and put money back in, because you're going to need to do it the second time, the third time, the 10th time, because that's the right thing to do.
So two things stick out to me. One, you've mentioned it, but I want to reiterate it. It's what I do. It's my job on this podcast. But you made the statement, the person in this example has made the decision that they do not want to finance their vehicle. They're going to save it up. And I think this question often comes in, well, if I've saved it up, I'm going to buy the vehicle, why do I have to pay myself back? And I think that's where you're coming. The whole premise of this, call it objections, coming from. But I think it needs to be noted first and foremost that the decision has been made, that the discipline is going to be executed to save up the money where you're not going to finance the vehicle. I think that's an important distinction, because often, and I've done it as well, I have financed a vehicle before. Most people do not have either the discipline or the foresight to save up for that 5 years to make that purchase. I need a new car. I got in an accident, breaks down. I'm going to finance it because I don't have the $50,000. I think that's a key distinction in this example. So I want to make sure that that's stated. And then the second thing, I can't think of it off the top of my head. Where'd it go? Well, I feel stupid now. We're recording a podcast, so it'll come back to me as you talk. But maybe if you talk about that, am I correct in that premise? And that maybe is the distinction between this. If I've saved it up, why do I have to pay myself back? Is that?
Yeah. Again, you hopefully, again, 95% of the people are borrowing money to purchase a vehicle. So just the fact that you have kind of gained the discipline and the ability to save money and forego the immediate gratification and say, I'm not going to go to my commercial bank and get a truck loan. I'm going to save up the money and I'm going to finance the truck myself. You're way ahead of 95+% of Americans. So that's awesome. So doing that for one vehicle And, let's say you save up for 5 years and then you go purchase that vehicle. That's awesome. I mean, you've basically beat Parkinson's law right there. And we haven't gone into that, but I mean, you're well ahead of 95+% of Americans. Why would you, after that 5 years, go back to the fact, well, my next truck, when this breaks down, I trade it in, I'm going to go get a new truck or a newer truck. I'm just going to go back to the bank. You've already defeated that beast. You've already got the banker out of your life when it comes to vehicles. Why wouldn't you continue that? Why wouldn't you build that account back up and do it again for the second truck, the third truck, the 10th truck? So yeah, that's my point of, did you think of the second one? I see you.
Well, your wise words always inspire me, Mike. And yes, I have thought of where I was going to go.
Well, go ahead.
So
Before you forget it, what's the second one?
So it was kind of along that same logical thought process, or that thought train. Is IBC, the goal of it is, yes, you've done the hard work and the disciplined aspect of saving it up. IBC wants to capture the money you're going to then go spend anyway. So rather than work really hard, bust your tail to save that money, and then go buy a car, which is a depreciating asset in and of itself, IBC policy allows you to capture that and then go spend the money. So the hard work is done. Now you're going to run it through a cash flow system that captures the money and grows legacy wealth. And to Mike's point, you continue that process. You pay yourself back. Again, that misconception. But if you continue to do that, your policy is going to grow to the point where your children's children are going to be benefiting. And that at that point is where IBC comes in at the greatest benefit. The hard work has been done, the discipline has been executed, the money's been saved. You're gonna go spend it because you need a car. It's not a matter of if, it's you have to. But because you're doing that and everyone knows you need to, run it through the IBC policy to recapture that money and go buy the car you're going to buy anyway. So that's where my mind was. And if you want to restate that a different way, but I did think those two things, the hard work of saving the money and then the idea of running it through the policy, the IBC theory, recapture the money you're going to spend anyway with the hard work already being done. Now you let your money make money make money. What was the thinking I wanted to communicate to those listening there? So thoughts, additions.
Yeah, and so again, kind of to summarize, the IBC method in talking about these things, and so let's look at a 20-year period and look at three options of buying this. Let's say a $50,000 truck every 5 years, and I know we've had probably more than one podcast on this, but I don't think it hurts to just kind of reiterate the concept. Okay, so
yeah, that thing is great.
Everyone's going to do the same thing. We're going to buy a $50,000 truck every 5 years. Now, okay, at the end of 5 years, your dilapidated truck with 200,000 miles, you're going to trade it in. You're hopefully going to get something for it, but your trade-in cost is going to be $50,000 for the second one. Okay, so let's assume $50,000 for 4 trucks, and we're going to look at a 20-year period. Okay, and we're going to look at 3 methods. Financing it through the bank, number one. If you finance a truck through the bank at 4% over 60 months and amortize that out, it's going to cost you $55,250. Okay, so option one is I'm going to use the bank and I'm going to buy 4 trucks over 20 years at $55K per truck. At the end of 20 years, I'm going to have spent $220,000 and I have zero. Okay, again, 95% of Americans are doing that. They're paying more than $50,000 for a truck. They're paying $55,000 because they're using the bank's money, but that's okay because I can't save because I'm not disciplined and I have no foresight and blah blah blah.
Well, there could be other reasons, Mike. It's not just
whatever it is.
You're a bad person.
But $220,000 4 trucks later, and I have zero money in my checking account. Okay,
understood.
Option two. I'm not going to pay $55,000 for a truck. I'm going to pay $50,000 for a truck. I'm going to save up my money and pay cash. And I buy 4 trucks over 20 years, $200,000, way less than $220,000. But at the end of 4 years, at the end of 4 trucks, at the end of 20 years, I have zero in my account. Okay, in IBC, what we're saying is you save up the money, you put $50,000 into your infinite banking concept IBC policy. We buy 4 trucks over 20 years. At the end of that 20 years, we have about $200,000 in our account. Okay. And it grows. Like, well, how does it grow? Well, you kind of go back to the previous podcast we did on the goose to lay the golden eggs. And that's kind of the concept of how it grows is your money is inside of the policy earning the 10 golden eggs, and you're using the life insurance company's goose and they're charging you 5 golden eggs. You're actually making money by parking yours inside of this cash flow system and using the life insurance company's money. Again, I'm getting way into the weeds on the concept, but my point is, if you do that over time, you're going to make all of it back over time. So the question is on using someone else's money, paying cash, or using the IBC method. When it relates to 4 trucks over 20 years, it's negative 220,000 using the bank's money, negative 200,000 using cash, or basically free trucks. I spent 200,000, but I got 200,000 in my account. I mean, my trucks really didn't cost me anything. I mean, which one of those would you rather do? I mean, it's pretty simple. So going back to the question of if you've convinced yourself like, yes, the IBC concept is the way I want to go. I'm going to set up my cash flow system using the IBC method. Why, after spending the money on that first truck, would you not want to go back and put the money back in so you can buy the second truck and the third truck and the fourth truck? But again, when we're talking with people, it is so hard for people to grasp the idea of why would I put that money back in when I saved up the money, and because you're going to do it again. It's the long-term thinking that is difficult for people. It's okay on a monthly basis, even okay on a yearly basis. But when you get beyond that, people just generally don't think long-term. So that's a very common objection. I'm hoping we clarified that. Maybe not, but
No, I think so. I mean, I think, and if it doesn't, my hope is people would give us a call and we can talk one-on-one and answer specific questions, poignant questions that they have. But I want to bring up another thought that as we're talking, that just popped into my head. The idea of why would I pay myself back? And it's the notion for me, and this is one of the big catalysts of why I got into IBC, is any money I run through my policy stays on that ledger. There's no subtraction symbol on it. So, quote unquote, paying myself back, if you talk about $10,000 a year, the second year it's at 20, third year's at 30, fourth year's at 50, fifth year's at, or I got my numbers mixed up, fifth year's at 50, fourth year's at 40, whatever it is. If you borrow your money out, go buy your truck, that money's still in the ledger making $50,000 worth of dividends and interest, a guaranteed internal rate of return. So any money I quote unquote pay myself back with, that money stays on that ledger as it grows, and hence the $200,000 that at the end of those 20 years, using that specific example. So it's not necessarily paying myself back; it is growing my uninterrupted pot of money, so I can continue to have that hockey stick shoot on up. So that's maybe another perspective, Mike. In this, you're going to do it anyway. Yes, people are need to buy cars; they're going to do it. But on maybe a proactive side, any money you put into your policy is going to stay on the ledger forever. And you can still leverage the cash value to go buy the things you're going to go buy anyway, but keep that money that you've quote unquote paid yourself back with. It stays in the ledger, gaining dividends and interest. To me, that's the concept people struggle with the most, because we are so accustomed to, you put it in, and when you use it, it comes out. Put it in, you use it, it comes out. That's not how this cash flow system works. And it's completely contradictory to all the education I had growing up until I got, educated in this area. So that's maybe another rabbit trail on the same idea of paying yourself back. So any thoughts on that?
yeah, it's a different concept. And when I say like it's tough for people to it's tough for everyone to understand. When I first started into this IBC venture for me and my family, it was tough for me too. It's the opposite of everything we've been taught. So it takes time to kind of grasp it. You just kind of have to open your mind up a little bit, think outside the box a little bit. and try to understand or try to know and learn what you think you know, but you really
Yeah.
don't know.
I think we talked about that last. There's a little bit of humbleness that needs to be involved in it.
Yeah.
But I want to put some quantitative values. You and your story was about 6 months, right? Before I mean, when you do something, you do it 100%, Mike. And you spent 6 months studying this to try and fully understand it. Is that the time frame it kind of took you?
Correct. Yep. Yep.
So my story, it was about a year, and my my understanding accelerated when I met Mike, and he was very gracious and sat down and answered all my questions, which is what we hope to do with anybody that contacts us. But my story was, it took about a year for me to wrap my mind around it. So putting that in perspective, we have been doing the podcast for, I think, a little over 3 months now, which seems kind of crazy. But if you've listened to every episode of this podcast every week, you're about halfway there to the time frame it took Mike to understand it. So I say all this because it is very different. And we want people to understand. We want to get this information out there, but we also understand it takes time. So maybe that's an encouragement. Maybe that's my motivation in mentioning that, Mike, to people listening. Be encouraged. They're doing what they need to do. They hopefully have the foundation to allow themselves to think outside the box. Here's these chuckleheads presenting this idea. What do I really think about this? But take the time to study it, to look at the numbers, to ask questions. Ask us. We'd be happy to answer them for you. But take the time and allow yourself the time to get an understanding of this, and then from there, see, can this fit in my family? And I think you'd be hard pressed to argue that it won't benefit your family, not only in the immediate, but we're talking legacy wealth. So I guess I wanted to encourage people that it does take time, Mike. Some people, if they have the mentality, they jump right in, and I've certainly had that. 2 weeks of talking and we're going. But most everybody, it takes a good little while. So just be encouraged. But the misconception of, do I have to pay myself back, is one that we get quite often. So maybe we'll go through a few of these different misconceptions as different podcast episodes. But yeah, I think this is a good one to talk through because we're doing it anyway. And that's the whole idea. It's a cash flow system. You're spending the money. Why not run it through your system, recoup that money, and then go do the things you need to do anyway? So I just rambled for a long time. I'm going to stop.
That's good. I think that was a good summary.
Okay. So we will end on that. If that brings up any questions for you, give us a call, 507-205-2284. Either Mike and I will answer that call. So feel free to do that. My email is dave@familybankingsolutions.com. Mike's is mike@familybankingsolutions.com. You can reach out to us, social media. Those don't get checked as often, but you're welcome to do that too. But if you could, share the podcast, like the podcast, send it around. Well, if you got a racquetball group, I don't know. I tried to find an obscure sport. Took my kids bowling yesterday. If you're in a bowling league, if you need something to talk about between frames, throw an IBC out there and then say, hey, got this podcast for IBC guys. We would appreciate it. All right, Mike, as always, it's good talking with you. We'll catch everybody next time on the next episode. Have a good day.